Hello everyone, this is part 2 of What If Naruto Found His Soulmate, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Hinata, you do understand your responsibilities as the heir, don't you? He asked, sly serious. She groaned inwardly. It was like the millionth time he asked this. Yes, Otu-san, was her same reply as every other time he had asked said question. And it was never for good, yet her father surprised her, with an emotion that found its way on his face that anyone would think that the Hyuga leader was incapable of. He smiled. So, you do understand that as a woman, and future head, you will need someone by your side. He said as he took one more sip of his tea, the smile residing a little. She dreaded what he was going to say next, for she knew where this was going. It had happened to nearly all the other females of the main branch anyway. Hinata, I and the council have decided that, now the smile was worn off. He looked at her straight in the eye and she, to his surprise, looked back, bracing herself for the next words. You are of age to marry, so as your father it falls in my hands to arrange a marriage. Now she was about to scream, but her manners and self-control didn't allow her to express what her very soul was shouting out. But Otu-san, she started to mumble, but he raised his hand in motion for her to silence. Normally, Hinata, your husband would be decided by the council alone. But, since you are my daughter, I wanted what is best for you, at least I hope it is. He said, thinking the last part to himself, and that calmed her down somehow, at least facially. The noble leader had no idea what was going on behind her mask of impassiveness, he had no idea what storms wrestled behind the calmness of her eyes to break free. I chose your husband to be from one of the noblest clans in the Fire Country. The man is the heir of the Akake clan, honorable and strong people they are. It is up to you to marry him or not and keep your honor as a woman and as the future head, he said. Hinata knew better than this. When he said, keep your honor, he truly meant, do it or else you will fall in my eyes. She knew that if she didn't, he would look at her as nothing, she would lose his respect, at least the bits of it that she had gained over the years. Plus, arranged marriages was something very few could escape from, it all rested on if the male accepted it on his part, as the female had no say in it, for the father took her place in this decision. She already knew who she wanted. But her father's respect was something she wanted too, so dear heaven, what would she do? Then Hiashi interrupted her thoughts again. The marriage will take place in 2 months from now. Until then, you are to stay in Konoha. Soon enough, maybe in a month or so, you will meet your husband-to-be. His face was emotionless, as always, all emotions that dared grace him before now vanished. I presume you understand? He asked. She only nodded, her lips not opening in fear of what would come out. Very well. You can go now, I have further matters to attend to. He said, and with a bow and a quiet, yes father, she was off. Hiashi looked at her slowly fleeting form. We shall see. Hinata, he thought as he finished up the rest of his tea and gazed upon the bane of all leaders throughout history and beyond. Paperwork. The girl couldn't do much at the time, couldn't even think. She went to her room at the 2nd floor of the manor. Things seemed to be going so well, and in a few minutes, all was ruined. She lied on her bed, and with the emotions overwhelming her, she cried, XXXXX. In the meantime, at Tsunade's office, Naruto was freaked out, with all the meaning this word can hold. Normally, whenever you went in, you could find the Hokage sleeping on reports and books, sake oozing around the atmosphere of the room. But when she was awake, it was something serious, for the blonde medic to stray away from her occasional naps. He gulped and hoped for the best, yet planned for the worst. Good. The windows were open. Tsunade only sighed while letting her hands drop on the desk. She looked up at Naruto, the blonde still grinning widely, but his posture was enough for her to see he was nervous. The shivering of his body didn't help him conceal it whatsoever. Naruto, she began, as you well know, even if I hate to admit it, I'm old. Naruto now was scared less. Tsunade admitted she was old. What the hell? The apocalypse was coming. Tsunade always wore a genjutsu that made her look like a beautiful young lady around her 20 IEs or 30 IEs, with an oversized cleavage to add to it. Naruto knew, though, that she was over 50, considering that she and Jiraiya were generally the same age. I'm not too old, but I know I'm old. My drinking habits and my life are getting onto me, she said, and her voice was so serious you thought the end of the world was coming, but there was a tint of normalcy since she took back on the "I'm old" thing a little. I am looking forward to retire, she said. Now Naruto was gleaming. If the current Hokage was about to retire, then that could only mean one thing, that herefor he thought that life couldn't be better. He had a good feeling about this. Konoha will soon need a new Hokage. Now his heart was about to explode. And, placing note of your successful battle against the whole Akatsuki organization, which all were S-ranked missing and legendary nins, I presume you are capable of. She now smirked as Naruto was about to start yelling from joy. Oh, how she liked toying with an open book like him. Finding the next Hokage, she said, and Naruto felt all his dreams vanish in a flash. What did she mean? Find him. Wasn't he damn enough? He looked down in disappointment. He could cry, but he knew it would be kind of weird, considering the situation and his age. He looked up again to see a grinning Tsunade. Naruto, you are to find the youngest Hokage in all of Konoha's history, she said, her grin wide as ever. Naruto was disappointed again. He wanted to be the youngest Hokage. Where should I look then? He asked, sadness covering his words as he let out a mental sigh. It was for the good of the village, was it not? Tsunade couldn't hold herself. She battled hard to keep from bursting into laughter from his expression. She only chuckled and reached for her drawer. He was still looking down, though. Right here, she said. He looked up at her and saw that she was holding a mirror. He was now confused, to say the least. Who the hell was he supposed to find in there? Tsunade Bar-chan, Granny, are you sure you're okay? He asked, pointing a finger at the mirror. She chuckled again. I'm fine. Come over here and take a look, Naruto, she said, motioning him with her free hand to come closer. He did and looked in the mirror, only to see his curious reflection. In there you will find the next Hokage, she said, and he looked up to gaze with confusion in her brown eyes. But, I can only see me, he said, trailing off at the last words. His eyes went wide, he started sweating, and his heart was about to burst out of his chest, all these without him even realizing. See, you already found him, Tsunade said, and burst out laughing, for she couldn't hold it anymore. It was just too much teasing him in such ways. This was one thing she was ought to miss. Oh, you had to look at the expression of your face when, ah, she tried to speak through the laughter. She was hitting her desk with her fist while having the other hand curled around her head as she kept on with her rampage of suppressed laughter, giggles, chuckles, and generally all these joyous emotions. When she finally finished, she looked up to see Naruto's reaction. He was just standing there, his face completely blank as he just stared at the mirror, probably waiting for his reflection to answer a question unspoken. Naruto? Tsunade asked, still trying to stop the little chuckles that were left, and out of nowhere. The peaceful night of Konoha was interrupted by one single scream of joy. Was heard across the hidden village, the sound practically echoing for a few seconds. All who resided in this otherwise calm town that night looked outside their windows to see what had happened, lights flickering to life around the streets, and any ninja that was awake looking towards the Hokage Tower, trying to spot any kind of danger. But anyone who knew a specific blonde well enough was somehow aware of what had happened and couldn't help but smile. Hinata, still crying on her bed, heard the scream of joy, and she knew that only one person in the whole world could scream that loud, and for only one reason: he did it. She yelled in her mind, and now the tears that came down her cheeks were tears of joy, trails of previous ones still visible as the waterworks opened once more. She was happy that at least he had his dreams come true. XXXXX. Tsunade had fought hard to stop Naruto from bouncing around. When she also told him that she was going to adopt him as his mother, since it would make it easier for people to accept him as the heir, she had to use her inhuman strength to keep him away from kissing her on the cheek. He was told that the official announcement for his adoption and his declaration as the next Hokage when Tsunade finally retired would come up in 2 months. For now, He just had to go to his apartment and pack things up. Tomorrow, he would move to Tsunade's house. The Hokage had always felt him like a son, though he called her granny. She always wanted to do it, bring him in her house, give him a home he was deprived of since childhood. She knew how cruel life had been to him and she wanted to give him the family he never had. She also knew this boy had more than enough in him to be the next Hokage, and she was proud that he could even control the power of the QB inside him, to some extent at least. He was 17 years old now and soon, the youngest Hokage in the history of the village hidden in the leaf. XXXXX. Naruto now was walking the quiet streets of the morning Konoha, gleaming all over. In about 2 hours he would go get his stuff and move them at Tsunade's house, and probably live with the Hokage for quite some time. And while his stroll led him through the quiet streets, his attention failed to notice a certain dark blue-haired girl sitting on a bench, lavender eyes empty as she stared into nothing. When he got close enough, a faint smell of lavender caught his attention. There weren't such flowers around here. Averting his gaze from the street and onto the producer of the scent, his eyes met no other than Ohio, Hinata, he said when he walked next to her. She was shot out of her daydreams to see who it was that interrupted her thoughts that she was all too glad that were away, even for a moment. Her eyes were immediately filled with joy when she finally took in the blonde hair, whisker marks and gleaming smile. She blushed but suddenly grew sad as she remembered what her father told her yesterday, his words running in her tired mind once more. How she wished that yesterday just didn't exist, at least at some point. He noticed the sadness in her expression, the fear that etched itself in her eyes, emotions that didn't belong here whatsoever. Something's bothering you, Hinata-chan. Want to talk about it? He said while sitting beside her. She blushed again but didn't look at him, the ground in front of her suddenly seeming quite interesting. Nothing, Naruto-kun, nothing, she said while trailing off in the last words, finding hard to talk all of a sudden, as if his very presence triggered things that she would prefer to stay buried, if only for a little while. True, nothing could compare to the pain she felt right now. Come on, Hinata, you know you can tell me anything. He said and grinned widely. She looked at him and her sadness grew even more when she saw that trademark grin of his. She decided that letting him know wouldn't be a big deal now, would it? She would at least get some of the pain out of her chest, get some of it out and let it vanish in his kind smiles. Otu-san told me something really important last night, she said, the sadness taking away the stutter because now, she tried hard to keep the tears from falling at the mere remembrance of the words that practically doomed her. He looked at her expression and could barely resist the urge to hug her. Such pain, it was as if he looked at himself in the mirror when he was young, when everyone and everything hated him, but this couldn't be the case. Who the hell could hate Hinata anyway? She was too cute for that. He reduced the sudden urge for affection though at simply placing a hand on her shoulder, which made her blush lightly once more. What is it, Hinata-chan? He said gently and seriously, the girl battling in her mind to find the appropriate words. It was strange of him to be like that, to really show affection and care for someone, but somehow, she managed to trigger that side of him. She just did. He told me that I'm going to, she now couldn't hold it. A few tears went down her cheeks but the strands of her hair hid them from the blonde's view, she holding fast on any restraints left in order to keep the waterworks of her eyes under control. Get married, she managed to say as her lips parted, her voice not above a whisper while fighting hard to keep herself from sobbing. Naruto on the other hand was confused. Marriage was something good, right? She should be happy. He was stupid at times, yes, but he knew much enough about human emotions to understand that she wasn't happy at all with it. Sadness was floating all over her, as if the bare thought of this word was crushing something, a dream of a child that grew up with the hope that one day it would come true, a dream that the dreadful decisions of its father had ruined just so easily. Then why aren't you happy? He asked again, his voice low and sincere. Because I don't want to. She said and started sobbing for she couldn't hold it anymore, couldn't hold fast against the waterfall of emotions that placed dread on her heart, fear in her mind. Backquote. Is it that bad? Is he that bad? He asked again, he, referring to the groom. She shook her head, no, I heard he comes from a noble family and that he is a good guy, but, she said fighting a fierce battle to keep herself from crying out loud, from letting her frustration be sounded up to the heaven and maybe beyond. I don't want to, she barely whispered and started sobbing even harder. She couldn't take it easy, no, not anymore. She now started crying, pitying herself at the same time for showing such a weakness in front of him. Naruto could only think of one thing that he could do about crying girls, one thing that he had seen many people do to each other to give comfort, to show that they were there. A single show of affection that, strangely, could at times work miracles. He moved his hands to take her in a hug, but before he could even flinch she launched herself at him, wanting to cry it all out, not caring if he would back up or not, she needed to do it. He didn't fall down, since the distance between them was barely a yard from the beginning. She was crying her soul out on his chest, she washed the pain away in the only thing she found fit at the moment. And he did the only thing he thought he could to comfort her, to help. He placed his hands around her and held her close in an embrace. She had her hands on his chest and her head at the crook of his salty tears trailing her pale cheeks once again as they slid down her face and on his jacket. A small weight left her heart that he didn't back up, he didn't leave her alone. Normally, she could have fainted already, but the urge to find a sanctuary, the simple need for contact with someone that she knew was capable to actually care, were bigger than her whole shyness together. She felt even better when he warped his arms around her, filling her with his warmth, letting her breath the aroma that was clearly his. She felt safe in there, as if all the worries were held outside by his hands. She was actually having a small feeling at the back of her heart, a feeling that what was going to happen with the passage of time was going to diminish in the darkness that would loom over her for the rest of her life in about 2 months. She felt happy. He was surprised at how warm she was yet again. Her hair smelled like lilacs and lavender, the faint aroma enjoyable to drink in, to enjoy. He placed his chin on her head and rubbed her back with his hand, the motion soothing the sobbing girl, if only a little. "It's all right," he whispered. He felt really good that he could at least comfort her, that he could do something to pull the sadness away. For once at least, he could comfort her like she did when he was depressed, though she didn't hug him back then, but little did it matter now. He felt her shook her head against his chest while still sobbing. "No, it's not," she said between her silent wails. I will have even more responsibilities. I'll have to carry his children," she said now sobbing harder and looked up at the cerulean orbs she so much admired, maybe loved more than anything even. But worst of all, I don't love him, I don't think I ever will," she said and now buried her face in his chest again, continuing to cry. He could feel tears running anew as she continued, the marks of sadness falling on his jacket, one after the other. He wished he could do something more, something that could help, something that could take all these away, yet for now, he just held her tighter. She did the same, wrapping her hands on his jacket, wanting him to drain all the sadness away. "I think that, maybe if you get to know him better," he said, but she knew clearly that he didn't mean it, for his voice was far too quiet, lacking greatly in the confidence each of his words usually bathed in. He was sad too. But it was because she was sad. Or was it? No. She didn't want to believe it, not yet at least. She wanted to enjoy every precious second while wrapped in this embrace. She didn't want to let go, ever, and to her oblivion neither did he. But they both knew that they had to, for good things don't really last long, do they? Well, they would make this one last as long as they could. After what seemed like an eternity, they broke apart. Between her sadness and the tears drying on her cheeks, she smiled, but he knew it was fake. He had seen both kinds of smiles she had, and this one was awfully similar to the ones he put on all the time, every time he was depressed, every time that his heart was in pain, but he didn't want to push the matter. He still held her hand though, and when she realized it, she blushed a slight pink, glad by his affection. For some reason, he wasn't happy for her. Not only because she wasn't happy, that was as clear as a cloudless sky. He too wasn't happy at all. He felt strange, his heart weighted like a ton at the moment. "I have to do it, Naruto-kun. It's what's the best for the clan," and she didn't finish when she saw the glare of sadness in his eyes, the glare of a pain similar to hers, the pain of having things bestowed on you, yet you having no say in it, having no choice. "And what's best for you? Haven't you thought of that? We are humans above all, Hinata," he said, his voice serious and his cerulean eyes that matched the wide blue yonder looking straight into her pale lavender moons. She shook her head and smiled, this time a true one. "Let's drop it, Naruto-kun, please," she pleaded. He looked away for a moment and then nodded. He smiled back at her. So, want to hear something really cool? He asked, his eyes now gleaming with happiness as he changed the subject. She reflected that gleam too now. She wanted him to be happy. She nodded. Yosh. Then can you come by my apartment? I've got some packing to do and I can't carry it all on my own. He said while rubbing the back of his head and laughing nervously. Pack for what? She asked confused. I'll tell you on the way. He said, and with that he grabbed her hand that he had left a few seconds before again and started rushing towards his apartment laughing like an idiot, the Hyuga girl following suit behind, a wide smile on her own pale face. He had probably forgotten he knew the shadow clone jutsu. Oh well, better for her. XXXXX. He explained the whole situation to her and she seemed to be interested in every word he said, every letter that left his lips. To tell the truth, now that he thought about it, she always had paid attention to him. She was the only one that he never needed to shout in order for her to listen, she always listened. Of course, he had let go of her hand a while ago so that someone couldn't go and spread rumors around, for he knew all too well what a rumor could do, damn too well. When they reached the apartment, most of the stuff was already packed. He made 3 cage buncheons and ordered them to pick up some of the travel bags, filled with clothes and other things. They did as they were told rather quickly. His clones seemed quite eager today. The furniture had to stay here though. Truth is, he could make an army of clones to carry the whole apartment if he wanted to, but he really enjoyed Hinata's company more than anything. He didn't understand why, but her being near him just brightened his day. So the blonde and the heiress of a mighty clan picked up what remained and strolled off towards the Hokage's mansion, clones swiftly following behind. When they reached it, Naruto was, of course, awe-stricken. The boy that had lived all his life in an apartment was now gazing upon one of the biggest buildings in Konoha. The home of the Godime Hokage. This place was bigger than all the apartments in his block of flats put together. They entered the house and were greeted by Tsunade herself, the Hokage practically beaming, though they both labeled it as her being happy for the boy who had finally moved in somewhere better. She had some servants who called him Sama, though he asked them not to take his things at his room on the first floor. The living room was enormous with a big dining table in the middle. Candles could be found on the walls letting their weak yet warm light bath the room. The kitchen was looking like how a regular one could, though it was way bigger, tiled floor and counters everywhere. His room was, amazingly, as big as the kitchen. He had a king-size bed, plasma TV, a stereo, even a desk. A big one, may I say. Now how the hell the Hokage had brought such technological gizmos of the West in the elemental countries, he couldn't really tell, neither did he care for now. The view of Konoha outside his windows that lied at the left and right of his bed was amazing. He had a clearer view of half the village along with the Hokage monuments. When he was introduced to the staff and to the house, he went outside to explore the mysterious and quite large garden. Hinata was with him, examining the flowers and taking deep breaths of their aromas, seemingly enjoying it. He couldn't help but smile at the sight of the tranquil expression on her face. He wished he could do more though, he wished he could. XXXXX. Tsunade had him with her in her office for the next month, teaching him the work of a Hokage. He found the paperwork extremely boring and understood now why she was asleep every time he would walk in, for the bane of all Hokages was the greatest pain he would have to endure in this position. He really liked though giving away missions. Soon, he had learned many things about how things rolled and Tsunade was nearly ready to put him into it. There was one more thing he had to do though to earn this final test. Hinata in the meantime spent her month wandering around her house and out in the streets. Sometimes she could run into Naruto and talk about how things were going. He would complain about how boring the paperwork was and she would tell him her ideas about some of the paperwork matters he had mentioned. The subject was clearly boring, but Naruto's playful mannerisms and her own giggling had somehow managed to make it a tad more interesting. They were talking more about themselves though. Naruto told her about many of his adventures and was surprised at how many things she knew about him and how little he knew about her. He despised the fact that she was forced to marry someone. He promised to himself that he would change this specific tradition at all costs when he would become Hokage, for such marriages, even if they could be profitable at the respective clans, could usually be a ruin for the individuals, people who had no say in it, people who had no choice but to suffer this fate. No, He wouldn't let people live the consequences of others' decisions, he wouldn't let her to fall away like that. Life right now seemed so common. He was so used to it. Little did he know, though, that soon enough, their lives would never be the same, for better or for worse. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.